Okay, Auzubillahi minash shaitanir rajeem. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Welcome to this special seminar, Know from the Quran Your Residence. That's the title that you might have read and seen. It's my pleasure to welcome Dr. Muhammad Waqar Raza, a friend I've known for over 30 years. He was researching in the University of Edinburgh, had come from Pakistan as a medical doctor to do advanced research in pathological sciences. And since then, he has worked as a leading consultant in various NHS trusts, particularly Newcastle NHS Trust for a while now. So we've been in touch recently, and he has written a book which is due to be published, and one more, inshallah, soon. And looking at this whole idea of cognition, intellect, understanding, how do we understand and see and the world and everything else in our lives. And obviously, from a neurobiological point of view, it is the brain that is studied, but it's not the brain that's been mentioned in the Quran. And that's what he has been looking at deeply, because Quran has placed all of that on chest and heart. But what does science tell us? He's going to reveal us some, inshallah, some very interesting things that he has discovered, which will, inshallah, also inspire us. I'd like to hand over to Dr. Raza. Please take us through this journey. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, my dear audience, and those who have joined us online. And thank you, Farooq, and your team for inviting me here. And thank you, audience, for coming here. Thank you. And those who have come online as well. So when we say thank you, we try to say thank you. So may I ask, by self-accrediting like this, do we assume that self lies here? Anybody say yes? Self is here?
Self is here.
You think self is here? Anybody else who thinks self is somewhere else? Right, okay. Do you think we feel here, like heart and mind? Do you think we feel here, like feeling like anger or passion or excitement or like feelings? Are you okay?
Yeah, I'm just going to set this up. There you go.
Okay, right, okay. So if you think we feel here, we have the feelings here in the heart. That's one view. Where do you think we think? Here? Here. So thinking is here, feeling is here, and self is here. Is that the view?
No.
Yeah? No. No. So okay. So today's presentation is going to be a surprise to a few of us, on those who are online. It could be unsettling, or it could be generating a new debate. The work which I'm going to present has not been referred to in the past, has not been looked at from this point of view. So first of all, I'll present some hard facts, the knowledge, the true knowledge from the Quran. Then I will present you some inferences, some arguments from that work, those references. At the end, I'll present you my own view of what the situation is, backed by the proof for debate. So that's how we are going to organize this discussion. But first of all, I want to start with a story, because I'm a storyteller, basically. Farooq, the book you mentioned is actually a novel on a similar topic about the identity of a person. Where do you find it? Here, where? So the story has a protagonist, and my protagonist is a friend. So with your permission, can I use your name? It's going to be okay, you know, it's not going to disturb anybody. You can't?
You're welcome. There's no
thank you very much indeed. Thank you. Thank you for offering. So because story has a friend, and I can't find a friend better than you in this situation at least. So we had another friend between us, common to us, who wrote me an email that Farooq has actually a double life. He lives on an address which has a postcode, but he also lives on an address which doesn't have a postcode, kind of mysterious address. And on the back of his house is a treasure hut. God knows what he hides there. And between the hut and the house is a place which people can feel, but whosoever has come back cannot describe it. So there is a house which is mysterious, which is not on the map, geological map. And there is a hut behind the house. And there is a place in between the two which is indescript, which people can experience but can't describe. So my friend advised me to speak to Farooq next time and ask his permission whether if I could visit his place. Farooq said, oh, well, the whole city is after visiting this place. You come along and look around as well, most welcomed. So explain to me that there's a city, and in the city is a central district. And in the district, there's a house which has a special marking, special flag on it. So he described me very nicely. So I didn't find any difficulty in finding the place. So he was waiting for me on the balcony, waved his hand, and I said, I want to come in. He said, speak in the toggle on the side of the house. Speak there, I can't hear you otherwise. So I spoke into the toggle and I said, I want to come in, please. He said, oh, no, you can't come in. This is not a place you come in. You can only visit from around, but you can't come in here. Ah, I said. And then I said, okay, if you can't come in, then if I can't come in, then you come out. At least we have some discussion and you show me around. He said, I can't leave this place either. So what do you do here? My friend said, I am quite busy, to be honest. I'm dealing with the thoughts and feelings. They're all rushing to me all the time, seeking my attention. And perhaps I'm a thought too of someone else. So this is the place I can't leave, and you can't come in, full stop. So that's the story finished. So you must be utterly disappointed. I was too disappointed, and I sat in disappointment on a bench in the central city, in the central district, somewhere on a bench. And I thought, was it futile visit? I didn't see the hut. I didn't see the place in between. What was this about? Why my friend invited me, and why the other friend? And while the whole city is after looking, searching, trying to search this place. And I actually drew the map. I said, here is the house in the red. In the blue, multicolor, is the hut. In between, in yellow, is the place in between the two. What does it mean? Is it something more deeper than what I thought? And then I remember something. It would have been a futile visit had it not been for this verse from the Quran, which in red says, وَعْلَمُوا أَنَّ اللَّهَ يَحُولُ بَيْنَ الْمَرْءِ وَالْقَلْبِ. And it says, and know means you try to find out. It is on us to find out. Know that Allah intervenes between man and his heart. The translation is man, but the word is mar. And we need a separate discussion what mar or nafs means. We were discussing just before that, before this session. So but I can give you my summary of my research that the mar actually is a location where the nafs lives. So it can be defined as the human because it's the seat of the nafs or the soul or both. So this mar means a location. So there is a location for the self to reside, and there is a qalb, and in between is something which we can't understand. We can experience if we are there, but we can't describe it. This is one of the mutashabihat. But the anatomy which has been described in this verse is there is a residence and there is a qalb, very close to each other, only intervened by something special, which we don't understand. So from here, I wanted to know where is mar and where is qalb? Where are they? So I wanted to ask the Quran further. And then I said, I found out the Quran actually says, Qulubul latif is sudur. The qalb, the qulub, the plural of qalb, are in the sudur. Oh my God, I mean, we have the sadr, we have the qulub, and qulub are in the sudur. But what is going on here? So at least we found out the qulub are in the sudur. The qalb is in sadr. So the brother's house and the qalb behind it is in the sadr. At least the qalb is in the sadr. But what about the house? Then there are two separate places where it says they whispered to his nafs. And nafs, where is nafs? Fi sudurin nas. Because they whisper into the sudur, so the sadr the nafs might be, which resides in the mar, might be in the sadr as well. So we have the qalb in the sadr, and we have mar in the sadr. What else in the sadr is this one, that all kind of thoughts, whether you reveal them, is a constant Quranic subject. Whether you reveal them or whether you keep them, Allah knows every thought because He knows what is in your sadr. So all kind of thoughts are in the sadr. They're thoughts about pieces of information or pieces of feelings or whatever intellectual products or intellectual pieces we have, they are contained in the sadr, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is aware of everything, whether we want to reveal it and word it or whether we don't. So everything is there. So sadr has three things now. Sadr has the nafs or mar, and sadr has the qalb, and sadr has all the thoughts, which are, if you think about this, when I was sitting on the desk, I pictured the whole district. So there were houses all around, and one of them was written ambitions. One of the other house was written anger. In the other house, there was written passion. In the other house, there was written something else, some other feeling, some other department of knowledge, religion, faith, all these things. So actually, this small district has the central house in it, which is mar, and a qalb behind it, and then it is punctuated by other buildings which are housing various kinds of categories of thought. So this is the picture which emerged so far. So where is this sadr, which contains the self, which contains everything which I have so far described? Where is this sadr? Then I come to this very important, can we remove that green stuff? Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Yes, that's better. Right, this is the verse which we will focus today, because this will tell us. Sorry.
Because most of your writing is at the top.
Yes, sorry, yes, that's good idea. That's wonderful, but I will trick you again because there will be writing below as well, but never mind. This is better. So, brother, what Farooq described me as a signpost, as a pointer, initially was this Habl al-Warid, which I didn't tell you what he described. So he told me that there is a Habl al-Warid on the top of his house. What is this Habl al-Warid? Then I said, okay. So the seat of the self is close to Habl al-Warid. The Habl al-Warid is the signpost. Right, so what we want to know, what the signpost is. What are signposts? I use another example here. I keep on telling you stories. So I tell you, my house is next to the broken pole. My house is next to the broken pole. So now the conditions are of this sentence that there is only one broken pole in the street. There cannot be more broken poles. And this pole must be broken. It cannot be intact. And it should be the, which means the only one, the special pole which is broken. And then the reference to the coordinate of the reference, which is nearness. So my house is next to the broken pole, which the ayah described nearness as well. So I'm simulating, I'm taking the idea from the ayah that the broken pole is next to my house. So we have now raised conditions. What if there were several broken poles in the street? I can't find the house. If I tell you my house is next to the broken pole, but you go to a street and there are several broken poles, you can't find the house. However, if you find one pole and it's not broken, you must think that I've come to the wrong street. It's not the street. Or if there was a broken pole on the other end of the city and this 200 miles away, and you say, no, this doesn't make sense. So all these three conditions has to be met by the signpost which the Quran mentions, because it does say Habl means rope, al means a special, and Warid means one vein, not plural, it's singular. So there is one vein, which is the vein which is associated with the rope. And the association, I have checked with the linguistics. This construction can be classed as murakkab tawsifi, or it could be classed as murakkab idafi. And murakkab idafi means rope is added to the vein. In murakkab tawsifi, the vein look like a rope itself. In either case, it could be called as a ropey vein. There is one vein, the signpost which Brother Farooq told me, that there's one vein which is the ropey vein, look like a rope, but it is a vein which sits on the top of my house, and it's very close. So this is where we have reached. So then I checked, what does the translations and interpretation say? I went to a Corpus Quran site, and they list 8 translations, English translations for a start. And 7 of them said jugular vein, and 1 of them said life vein. Here you go. This is the picture of jugular veins. There are 4 jugular veins in the neck. These blue veins, these veins are the 2 on this side, and those who are online can see my pointer possibly. There are 2 veins on this side and 2 veins on this side, on the right side. And there are 4 jugular veins, not 1. It's not the vein. It's not one. And it doesn't look like a rope. none of them look like a rope. All three conditions it has failed. The translation of jugular vein has failed all the three conditions that we used in the example, my house is next to the broken pole. So there are 4 veins in the neck, and they are 4, they're not special veins, and they don't look like the rope. And nothing in the throat. I mean, if you think we have the self here, it's far away from the throat or neck. If you think we have the self here, again, it's far away from, it's not near. So all the three conditions, the translation has failed. So I wanted to know who started it. So I searched, and about the life vein, one translation, life vein. Now, the people who know the anatomy should understand that the veins are not important. The arteries are important. Somebody must have thought, in slaughtering, we cut the vein, and animal then ends the life. It's not the vein, it's the arteries. It's the neck artery, which is called the carotid artery, which when cut results in the end of life, not the vein. People can have clotted veins, and they don't have any effect. These jugular vein can be clotted, and it doesn't affect the health. It can, but if you have a clot in the artery, that's end of the life, or it could end up in a stroke. So arteries are life vessels, not the veins. The arteries are life vessels. So the translation of life vein is a contradiction in terms. Veins are not life veins. Arteries are life arteries or vessels. So this translation failed. These translations failed my understanding of the verse in all aspects. So I wanted to know from some experts how this translation started. So there was this group who was working in a university and looking at the important contributions of Muslim contributors or scholars in understanding of anatomy in 900 onward, in our Middle Ages, bright golden Middle Ages. So I contacted them and requested them to enlighten me how the jugular vein translation entered into the translations as an interpretation of Habl al-Warid. And they said very simple thing. They said there was this time when the knowledge was flourishing, and somebody picked up the idea of Tibbe Nabawi, and they picked up all the verses in the Quran and ahadith, which had some medical implications, and they tried to build up the stories and they build up the knowledge, so new knowledge. It was in vogue in those days. So somebody wrote Al-Tib min al-Kitab wa Sunnah. And this was described to me by this group, that this author picked up the Habl al-Warid from 1516 from Surah Qaf, and he took the meaning from Tanweer al-Mikbas, which is an interpretation of Ibn Abbas, who was the Sahabi, one of the Sahaba of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, raziyallahu anhu. So he took up that interpretation of the vein near the halq, near the throat, from Ibn Abbas, and took up the name Warid al-Widaj from Ibn Sina, and he translated it Warid al-Widaj, which when came in 16th century to Europe was picked up as jugular vein. Full stop. My research ended. How can you compete with Ibn Abbas translation? So I shelved my project. End of the story. But then it occurred to me that I should check the reference myself. So I picked up the Tanweer and picked up that page. This was published in Lebanon. And I picked up the translation Within the bracket is the actual translation, and in red outside the bracket is actually interpretation by Mikbas. And it said something very, very strange. First of all, it said the child of Adam, and it said this means Abu Jahl. What? Abu Jahl? Why specifically? And then it's keep on saying we are more aware of him, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says. So it refers to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, that we are more aware of him and have more power over him than his jugular vein. That doesn't make sense. Jugular vein has no power on us, and it's not near to anything which we relate to intellect or heart or the brain. You know, some people said heart, some people said brain. It's not close to anyone, and jugular vein doesn't have any power. I know that from medical knowledge. So I became more curious, not suspicious at this stage, but curious that what is the story here? So I went to the translation produced by Mokrain Gizu. One of our this institute has produced his book as well, I noticed. So he translated Tanveer, and he said something very strange. He said it has two authors, proposed authors, not one. He said it could have been, it's mentioned, he said it is reported to be produced by Ibn Abbas, who was a Sahabi, or it could be a guy called Firozuddin, who was born 800 years later. What? So a translation, an interpretation, which is either referred to 800 years earlier or 800 years later. What is the authenticity of this work? And then, because he said, he produced reason for it. He said for Ibn Abbas, it has references from the later time. Like in Bible, Prophet Moses has been reported to have said, I died, or he died 900 years later or 100 years later. So it can't be written by Moses, alayhi salam, if he wrote himself that he died. How can he write that he died? So something like this was in this references, several references. And then he moved on to say that it has 8 or 9 references. And some of them are dubious, but one of them is called silsila-e-kadhib, or which means chains of lie. And then he continues to say, and I read it rather, there's no doubt, this is the author, the translator of this work, there's no doubt that this commentary is not the work of Ibn Abbas. He wrote it. The chain of transmitters of this commentary goes back to Muhammad ibn Marwan al-Kalbi, blah, blah, which is described by hadith experts as the chain of lies, silsila-e-kadhib. For this line of transmission is utterly dubious and unreliable. And he keeps on saying, one does not even need to test it against the criteria set for accuracy of hadith. He said it has no authority. He was not the only one. Bilal Phillips wrote the same thing in his Asul-e-Tafsir, not to consult this book for references or for interpretation, because it's not reliable. So here you go. So I then took a deep breath and said, okay, let's go back to the work. So then, obviously, from my previous interpretation, it was neither a jugular vein and nor a life vein. So because the number didn't match, because the appearance didn't match, and nearness to the reference coordinate didn't match, and the literature reference is unreliable. So I should continue with my project, which I did. And I wanted to see one vein in the body, one, single, not pair. And I wanted to see it to be like rope. And I wanted to see it to near to center of intellect somewhere, somehow. So that's what I want to see at least. So most of the veins appear like right arm, left leg, right leg, but there are unpaired veins like one going to liver, one going to spleen, but none of them is ropey. They are ordinary veins. But there are two veins which are ropey. The one is actually called cord, the Syrian, Varid Syrian, or something similar, sound like this, which is the umbilical cord, which connects the placenta with the baby. It looks like rope, but it goes, before you start your earthly life, it goes away. It's not part of our body. So that's it. So one vein is left, which I discovered from my previous 50 years old knowledge. I'm about 100 years anyway. So I want to know where the Habl al-Warid is. I found this vein, which starts from here, and it goes right back up to here. And it runs in a groove, and it looks like a rope. It's called superior venous, superior sagittal sinus. It's called superior sagittal sinus. It starts from here, go all the way in the middle on the back of the head before it make a U-turn and go somewhere else. And this looks like a rope. This is a groove in which it runs. This groove actually in which it runs. So it is making a mark on the place where it is running. And this is how, when somebody took it from between the two sides of the brain, this is how it looked. So it looked like a rope, and it is single. And now one condition is left. It should be close to where things are happening. It should be close. If it is not close to where things are happening, intellectual things, then we have lost the case again. So, you know, what I want to tell you here is that these guys in these countries are taking things seriously. We are not. They took 10,000 subjects from the UK Biobank and placed them in MRI and asked them to think something special under instruction. And what happens is, when you think a particular thing, that part of the brain needs more blood. And the MRI can detect small, minute changes in the blood flow and shows them on the MRI. So you can say that this person was thinking his childhood, this part is glowing. And this person was thinking about his enemies, this part is glowing. And this person was thinking about his property, this part is glowing. This thinking was having wandering thoughts. They have found out 8 major networks. Default mode is wandering thoughts, when you are not actively thinking. So they said, okay, go and MRI, just wander around, just let your mind work. And then they found out that these parts glow. And then executive functioning, which means give instruction to your mind, decision making. So then they found out that these are the parts of the brain which are decision makers, 10,000 people. And then cognitive control, where they touch their body or they give them something to smell or something to see and ask them to make particular interpretation of those signals. And then this looked at the MRI, and certain other parts of the brain looked bright. And again, attention and control and sensory-motor, various functions. So all these networks are around the Habl al-Warid. All these networks are around, glowing around Habl al-Warid. The Habl al-Warid is somewhere here. So all these parts are glowing around Habl al-Warid. But what I want is to focus. This is Habl al-Warid with the red arrow, but I want you to focus on this area for tonight. And I have a reason for that, and I'm going to explain to you. This is where I'm offering you my own interpretation. So this was the original map of the central district of my brother Farooq's special place to live. And that's how it is shown. It has 2 parts. is called thalamus, and outer part is called limbic system. The limbic means outer. So there is a central bit which is called thalamus, and there is outer bit which is called limbic. So just to remember for this session, there is the thalamus, the inner part, and there is outer bit which is called limbic. And I checked. This is a work in progress. This is a growing science because this is deep in the brain. It's very difficult to study this part. So I checked thalamus and cognition, thalamus and emotion, thalamus and reasoning, thalamus and executive functions. These are the number of articles published in science journals. Number of articles, 2,590 articles, thalamus and cognition. And similar, and then limbic system and pain, limbic system motivation, pleasure, anger, again, huge number of articles published. So you can see the division. You can probably see the division. There's a knowledge bit and there is an emotion bit. You can see the thalamus is thinking and the limbic system is about feeling. But the middle part is the thalamus and this peripheral part is the limbic. Now I tell you why the nomenclature in the Quran, why Quran called chest and heart. And this is the most interesting part of today's presentation. Why the Quran called chest and heart. And it's not a small thing because it's a constant theme in the Quran. So I'm going to show you the similarities between the chest. Do you recognize this? This is chest X-ray. And in the chest X-ray, you have the two lungs, Brother Abu Dania. You have two lungs, in the middle is the heart. Yeah? So do you think this is a good drawing of that part? Good, roughly speaking, near enough? But this is not the drawing of the chest. On the left, on my left, on this left is the chest. On the right is the drawing of the thalamus, the pink one, and the limbic system around it. This is not drawing of the chest. This is drawing of the thalamus and the limbic system. There are two thalamus, and there is around that, the structure is called limbic system. Okay, so what do you think the yellow bit is? This is again similar to two lungs, isn't it? But this picture was magnified from the two thalami in the brain. The two thalami in the brain, when I magnify, they look like two lungs. So here is a cage, the ribs. They are quite recognizable ribs. Here is the appearance. If I bend down, on my posterior part is the spine in the middle, and the ribs then fan out like this. Rib them fan out like this. And that's how, if you look at the thalamus and the limbic system from the top, there are fibers that fan out exactly the same way as the ribs fan out from the spine, from the past. Okay. Another picture from the spine, that's how that fanning out actually looks like. This is the true picture. That's how the fanning out looks like. Right. On where I bend down, on my ventral side is two mammary glands. Okay. On the ventral side of the two thalami are two glands which they call as mammillary glands. Their name is mammary. Mammillary means small mammary glands. Their even name is taken like this. So on the top, if I bend down, on the top is the spine, fan out the ribs. Within there are two lungs, and on the ventral side is two mammary glands. That's exactly the arrangement of the things in the thalamus and the limbic system in the part which I've shown you. Okay, we move inside the lungs. On the left is the bronchial tree, the airways. On the right is the vasculature of the lungs. in the middle is the nerves which run in the thalamus. So they look like similar network of structures. I move to the heart and I say there are two lungs in this drawing. In the middle is the heart. Okay. And then I've shown you this picture. There are two lungs, and in the middle is a cavity, is called third ventricle. In anatomy, it's called third ventricle. Heart has ventricles as well. This is called third ventricle. Right. So third ventricle, the heart is suspended in mediastinum. It's a bit medical term. You don't need to remember. I'm just developing a comparison. The heart is suspended in mediastinum. The ventricle is suspended in septum pellucidum. The heart is covered with pericardium. The ventricle is suspended, covered by pia mater. The heart has a lining inside, which is called endocardium. The ventricle has a lining, which is called ependymal cells. The heart has a system which is used for transmission of electricity, which we detect in ECG. It controls the heart pumps. There are special cells within the walls of the third ventricle, which we don't know the function. They are mysterious. We don't know what they do. They are called tenocytes, but there is a network of cells similar to the heart. And then the heart obviously pumps the blood. The third ventricle pumps the CSF, which is the fluid of the brain. It pumps, okay? The heart pumps the blood. The third ventricle pumps the fluid of the brain, which is called CSF. And there is one more resemblance, which I left for you to guess. The heart does what? It pumps. And the third ventricle pumps too. Similar. And they pump at the same speed as well. Because the Quranic knowledge is eternally perfect, and our knowledge is constantly incomplete. So that's the relationship of our understanding with the Quran. So this provides us an opportunity to go back again and again and get more. With each dive, you get more gems. So that's our relationship with the Quran. And I think with this dive, we have brought this out. And this also is confirmed by another very famous ayah that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says He will show signs in the horizon and within yourself. And these are the signs which are coming as we go along. So this argument is for a view that nobody in the past has managed to see Hablul Warid and the structures the way we are looking at today, so that it must be wrong. Because people in the past couldn't see it that way, and this is new knowledge, so it must be wrong. Because the Quran says we keep on showing you new signs, so it can't be wrong. So it might be wrong on its merits, but tomorrow there might be some other study on a similar ground and showing this study is wrong. And there might be structures more closely resembling the heart and the chest. There might be. But as such, this proposal cannot be rejected on the ground that nobody in the past has referred to it or mentioned it, or it's not found in the Salafi knowledge or Muqaddamin, the people of earlier time. So I want to highlight another point here. The Sadr is mentioned 44 times, Qalb 132 times, etc., etc. And these all, we are wandering between here, and that's where we started, didn't we? We are still Muslims are wandering between here and here. Translations have heart, person, mind, soul, self, chest, breast, heart, mixed up, chart. And there's no clear picture. We are still stuck in the debate of what we are talking about when the Quran mentions the devices of intellect. We are still divided, we are still confused, and no translation. Hence, there's no progress in this area made by Muslim scholars as such, as a body of Muslim scholars. Muslim anatomists, or Muslim this, or Muslim that, obviously they have done their work, but not as a Quranic science of neurology. Nobody has done this. The reason being the careless translation of one. You can't mess up with the Quran. The careless translation of one word, Hablil Warid, has misled people over centuries, and they are still saying Hablil Warid. And it can be disturbing, unsettling to some people who say, oh, it's not the Hablil Warid. For God's sake, it's not. It might unsettle people. It's so enshrined and so ingrained in the understanding that this has to be Hablil Warid. It's not. Whether what I proposed is true, or right, or wrong, because this is a debate. But the initial part where I showed you that jugular vein is not Hablil Warid is definite. So this is where I end, and I say, when next time we go for putting our head down, very next to us, between us and our qalb is the presence of Almighty Allah. And we might also do a prostration there as well. Thank you very much.